Unfortunately, to a child, it can also come across as you're not capable. So let them enjoy their own capacity and they'll blow you away. And then lastly, we want your teams to have fun, but we also want you to have fun in the process as well. So enjoy this journey. Okay, so this is something that we ask in our live sessions. Again, something that we've added new, but we want you to keep this in mind. No, this is for you. The reason we're doing this webinar is for you, so that you can have a peace of mind and you can go forth in the year happy, feeling prepared. These are some of the reasons why somebody might want to participate in this presentation. And Steve's computer went on, so I think we're good. And if you do have questions, though, and if there is something specific, you know, there is the question feature, the chat feature. Please go ahead and take the moment right now and send a message to us to say this is exactly what I want to get from this session. What we have covered, this fairly thorough presentation will cover things that aren't, but that come up in this little portion, we'll try to address at the end of the presentation. So feel free to use that and tell us how we can help you.
Or if somebody could just send us one to make sure it's working.
Or send us just a question to say hello so we know it's working. All right, so where this challenge will take teams this year. They are going to design and build and test the structure, and the materials this year are going to be wood, glue, playing cards, and/or adhesive tape. We'll go into each of those in more detail later on in the presentation. They will design and build a single removal device, and this is to be used to remove pieces from the structure. So yes, you heard me right, and that's part of the reason it's called Lose to Win. It's an exciting change this year. The structure will support the weight of the pressure board, and only the pressure board, no weights this year, and the team will then remove parts from the structure while supporting the weight of the pressure board. The story is about transformation, and there will also be a prop or set piece that transforms as the structure is transformed, aka as pieces are removed. Well, as usual, there will be 2 team choice elements, and the budget this year for what comes into the presentation area on the day of the tournament, not throughout the entire process, but again, in the presentation area is $150. Glossary. For those that are absolutely new to the structure challenge, we realize we should not take it for granted that you might know these terms. The structure is what the team designs and builds, meeting the criteria using the materials I listed previously. The structure tester, the tester base, is what you see the little diagram to the right about. It's used to test the performance of the structure. It's designed for safety. We have a video to show you what one looks like here, and you'll see them at the tournament as well. A pressure board is a square flat wooden plate that's placed on top of the structure to help with the testing, and again, safety first. We have a safety pole. When there are weights, this helps make sure that the weights don't slide off, and that concept applies to the pressure board as well. And then testing, the actual testing, subjecting the structure to whatever challenge we've kind of devised for the year. All right. Team member and manager responsibilities. There's a lot to do. Definitely the first things first. Read the rules of the road, understand them, read the challenge, understand them, question the challenge, read it again, read the rules of the road again, and of course if you still have any questions, you can request a clarification. You can find that on the website before February 15th. And please don't hesitate to submit a request for clarification. It's there for you. Again, we want you to feel prepared and comfortable going into the coming year. All right, the central challenge. So the central challenge, again, mentioning it, the structure is going to be built by the teams using wood, glue, playing cards, and/or adhesive tape. They may use multiple versions of one of these, or they may use multiple versions of all 4 of the materials. It's entirely up to the team. The team will test the strength by placing it on the tester, putting the pressure board on top of it, usually that's about 10 pounds, and then throughout the presentation time removing parts of the structure. And the structure this year is going to be based on 2 ratios. So I'm going to read them, and then I'm going to just summarize it generally speaking. The initial weight of the structure compared to the lightest structure entered, and then the total weight removed compared to the initial weight of the structure. So essentially for teams, the trade-off here is the weight of their structure versus how much weight they can pull off the structure within the presentation time. So, you know, you'll see it in the table later on. It's totally arbitrary, but you can try to go for the lightest, you can try to go to removing the most weight, or you can go for anything in between. But that is the team's choice, and it's going to be an exciting challenge solution combination to see. Okay, so this central challenge, again, yes, hi Ed, everybody's saying hello. The story is about how something, someone, or someplace is transformed from its beginning appearance to a noticeably different one. Again, very physically within the structure itself, but, you know, up to the team when it comes to the story. There will be a prop or set piece that does not need to necessarily be made out of the same materials as the structure, but it will also be transformed as parts are removed from the structure during the presentation. So now we're going to move into the structure, and I'm going to go ahead and pass the microphone to Ron.
Okay, everybody. Going to quickly go through some of the specifications and materials list and items as they pertain to the structure this year. As those of you who are returning know, every year the specifications, weight, height, other parameters do vary. This year, the weight limitation is 75 grams or less, and that applies to all divisions, whether they be elementary, secondary, middle, or university. So for weight of the structure, it's 75 grams or less. And we will talk a little bit later in the discussion of scoring how the team's choice on how they build and what the weight of their structure is can affect the overall scoring. So the 75 grams is a maximum, not something I'm trying to hit exactly, but a maximum. As far as the height, in past years, we tended to have structures oftentimes that are between 7.5 and 9 inches tall. This year, this is one of the big changes. We're looking at least 12 inches and no more than 15. And that introduces a completely different dynamic into the testing, but that will be teamed up with another big change this year, which is the teams will not be adding weights to the testing for the structure other than the pressure board itself. So at least 12 and no more than 15 inches. And it will be checked twice during structure check-in. So as it says here, once it's initially placed at the tester base, mock-up, and then again when the team inverts it and it's flipped 180 degrees. So as part of the testing process, you can envision that your team will approach the check-in. We don't know the exact order, but probably will be weighed first. They will be asked a little bit about what materials they use in the structure, and then it will be tested to check conformity between the 12 and 15 inches. Now, as discussed in the challenge and reiterated here, the structure must be able to stand up on the tester base without team members holding it, and that's in both testing modes. So they could come up, check it, stand it up. Structure check-in official will say yes, it complies, or it doesn't, and then turns over, and they would check it again. In both cases, they have to have the be able to stand without holding it up. Then another big requirement is that the structure have a opening at least 2 inches that passes through its entire diameter. So I guess we're back live, huh? Okay. distracting. Anyway, okay. So we have a mock-up that will be. I'm getting some education live here. So anyway, a 2-inch circular column can pass all the way through it. And as Nora mentioned earlier, that has to do with the safety dimension that we build into the entire program and for this challenge. Another requirement is that the structure, when it's checked in and placed for testing, must be a single unit. So if you can envision, somebody might have a structure that has multiple elements that are not connected, not somehow working together, that would not be allowed. The structure has to be a single unit, even though it may originally have been built as multiple units and then pieced together. And in this particular case, since one of the challenges will be to remove elements of it, those parts that would be removed are not affixed per se, but they still have to be part of that single unit. So then when they place the tester on the tester base, as outlined, they have 3 possible points of contact, or excuse me, 3 areas of possible contact. They can contact the inside top surface of the pressure board, the bottom surface, the top surface of the tester base, and again, as in last year, when placed by the team, may touch the safety pole. Now, depending on the design of their structure, that may actually be 6, 10, 12, 15 actual different points of contact with those 3 surfaces, but they are allowed to have contact in those 3 surfaces at initial placement. This gives you a little idea of what the structure tester and the specifications would be. It's the same tester base that has been used for as long as I've been in the program, which goes back many years. But this year, we'll be using only the pressure board, which you see here would be placed on top of the structure by a team over the safety pole, and that begins the basic structure testing mode. Once they place the structure on the tester, then the first item placed will be the pressure board. Now, here in Colorado, we have about 6 or 8 different tester bases we use at competitions. All of the pressure boards are marked with weights, and the most consistent weight in ours is a 10-pound pressure board. We think we have 1 or 2 at 12. But anyway, if you are a team manager and building a tester base, and that was something we didn't talk about earlier, the teams benefit from having access to a tester base. We'll give you an email or a URL link later for where that instructions on how to build that tester base are available. The tester base does not need to be built by team members. That can be built by contracted out to a shop, husband, grandpa, wife, whomever. As long as they have the tools and follow directions, that does not have to be built by the teams. But they really do benefit from having one available. Going now from the structure to what the structure can be made from, the structure material list. These are definitions pretty much from the challenge. Any one of 4 types of materials, 1, 2, 3, or 4. Definition of natural wood is a substance found under the bark of any type of tree. Bamboo and grasses are not considered woods. They are not woods, so they would not be an allowable material for use in construction. Glue, any commercially available adhesive material applied in liquid form capable of creating a permanent bond. And I read that pretty much directly because this definition, glue, gets so many questions in our live team manager trainings. We want to make sure people understand that the feature we're looking for in glues are that they are applied in liquid form and create a permanent bond. And so epoxy, super glues, gorilla glues, hot glues, glues using accelerants, spray adhesives, all are types of glues that meet this definition. And as we'll talk a little bit about later, we also get a lot of questions about expandable foams. This would be a product if you've been working in contracting and say you install a window and you would like to fill a void between the window and the wood frame. You can squirt it in there and it expands and it dries and it is solid. It can hold two different materials in rigid place relative to one another, but they don't form a bond. And so in that case, they are not eligible to be considered a glue. Playing cards, again, we received a lot of questions, but basically think of pre-printed game cards in decks. They can be 3x4, 2x5, 1x4, whatever the dimensions are, as long as they are sold and packaged in decks for the primary purposes of playing a game. So if your team wants to make their own by cutting boards, things like that, that would, cutting poster boards, that would not be considered a playing card. And then adhesive materials, any commercially available variety of a backing material. And that's what's critical here, is that there's a backing material, typically paper, but it can be other types of things. We see foil, other types of materials that have a sticky adhesive. And here's the key here, for the primary purpose of connecting other materials together without the use of heat, water, or another type of accelerant. Okay? As you've heard several times, they can use 1, 2, 3, or all 4 types of materials, and they may use multiples of any one of the materials. We have also talked about, and the challenge specifies that laminates are allowed. So if those of you who are not familiar with laminates, think of a sheet of plywood or different types, even some cardboards, where you have multiple layers of a material with an adhesive in between to bond them together and creates rigidity and strength. Well, if it's a wood laminate, commercially purchased, not an allowable substance. But if teams want to make laminates, combining any of those materials, those are permitted. And then teams may not soak the structure in anything other than water for use of, well, however they want to use it in soaking it in their structure. Only water. For those of you here in Colorado and on the wider audience, we've listed some of the Denver area stores and hobby shops that carry these materials. Some of these are also national, so Hobby Lobby and Michael's are national chains. Home Depot and Lowe's also have products. We have several mail order firms here, both in the national, and we're doing a little promotion for a Colorado firm. We tell the team managers during our live training that you notice that there's a balsa shows up commonly in these names. And that's because that's one of their primary products. These firms tend to support model airplane builders and other model builders, and one of their big products is balsa. But they also stock many other types of wood, pine, walnut. Any type of wood is eligible. It's just the names of the firms that you can use for getting mail order tend to focus on the balsa, but there's certainly no limitation or suggestion that balsa would be the product that you would use. One of the ones that we picked up at our last team managers training is for playing cards. For those of you that are in states that have legalized gaming, casinos go through a lot of cards, and if your team doesn't mind having a corner cut off or a hole punched in them, they don't have to spend a lot of money in acquiring the cards, but we're not sure that gasoline expense or other gaming expenses associated with the team manager acquiring those cards should show up on the expense form. Okay? Now, just quickly, to back up a little bit here, we did try to put together a few little graphics. These are some of the different types of tape materials that we see here. So frog tape, you see several different types of duct tape, electrical tape, scotch tape, masking tape. Again, they have the requisite backing material and are coated with the sticky adhesives so they can use for connecting other materials together. Playing cards, pretty standard. And then on glues and adhesives here, again, we've showed some examples with the hot glues, the liquid nails. You see spray adhesives, Elmer's glue. They all have different properties, but they all meet the definition of being able to create a permanent bond, and teams may choose to use those. Okay, then getting on to designing and building the structure. We are now going to move over to Steve, talk a little bit about structure and then also the removal device.
Okay, hello all. All right, teams are encouraged again to build and test as many structures as possible. You can't hear me now?
We hear you.
Okay. These tests, again, we encourage you to build a tester, but it's not required. You can use an encyclopedia or any other thing to apply weight to the structure. But we'll discuss the tester base later. Again, you can't use any technology that designs, creates, or aids in the testing of the structure. We want the kids to learn this by themselves, and these would give them an unfair advantage. Team members must do all of the tooling or shaping of the structure, and they can use jigs, but again, the team members have to create all the jigs themselves. Again, the team will create and build a removal device using its choice of materials. You do not have to use the materials from the materials list. You can use anything you choose to build your removal device. The removal device, again, enables the teams to selectively remove the structure parts during the presentation. So they use the removal device to pick and choose what part or parts they want to remove at any given time. Again, the team can have only one removal device. This is the one that's listed on your tournament data form and the one that's scored. Again, the team chooses how to operate the removal device. We don't do it for them. There's no limit to how much of the structure that can be removed at any attempt. They can remove as little or as much as they choose at any given time. Okay, the part removal begins anytime after the 8-minute presentation time begins. The team places the structure on the tester base, places the pressure board, and again they begin the weight removal. The pressure board has to hold for 4 seconds, and then they can start removal after that. Again, the pressure board, once it is placed and the 4-second count begins, cannot ever be moved until either time ends, they choose not to remove any more parts, they're done, or the structure fails. There will not be any safety shields this year, so that allows the team access from any of the 4 sides of the tester base. And to accommodate this, protective eyewear is required for all team members engaged in testing and weight removal. Just a note, regular eyeglasses do not qualify as protective eyewear. You can go to your local hardware store or lumber supply store and pick up your protective eyewear. The teams must provide their own. The tournament officials will not provide protective eyewear. Yeah. Okay. So, kind of some more particulars. A safety line, 6 inches from the tester base all the way around, will be placed on the floor next to the tester base. Okay, all team members, after the pressure board is initially placed, must remain outside the safety line in order for part removal and testing. Okay, once all hands are removed from the structure tester, then the 4-second, the weight removal appraiser will begin the 4-second count. To earn any weight-related points, the structure must initially hold the pressure board for at least 4 seconds. Again, to kind of a reiteration, the teams may remove as many or as few parts at any given time as they choose. Again, the teams are not required to remove all parts outside the safety line during each attempt. However, if the structure fails or time ends before all these parts are brought out and put into the parts removed container, they will not count. Structure part, again, the third bullet down, structure parts that have been removed and okay. Structure parts that have been removed and the removal device crosses the safety line for 4 seconds. Your 4-second count begins, and then, so I remove, good grief, let's start all over again. In order for the removal to be, a removal to be considered, the structure parts have to be removed and removal device outside the safety line for a 4-second count. Again, successfully removed parts will be set aside into a removed parts container, and the terminal will provide that container. Okay, once the 4-second count is completed, removed parts that have moved across the safety line can be handled by the team members with their hands and placed in the removed parts container. They don't have to be placed into the parts container with the removal device. Any structure parts that are dropped inside the safety line during the removal attempt may be retrieved using only the removal device. They can't put their hands across the safety line and then brought outside the safety line and then placed in the removed parts container. Any parts that are on the ground or on the structure tester, as I said before, when time ends or the structure fails, will not count towards scoring. Any part, again, any part that's not in the removable parts container will not count towards scoring. What are you laughing about over there? We're having fun over here. If the removal device completely crosses outside the safety line at any time, it's considered a removal attempt, and 4 seconds must pass before another removal attempt can be made. And we're stressing this pretty hard. Only parts successfully removed from the structure and set aside in the removed parts container for weighing before the end of the presentation are included in the total weight removed. And then after the presentation time ends, the parts removed, the parts that are in the removed parts container will be weighed on a second calibrated scale, and then the weight removed appraiser will record this, and a team member will initial off. They accept that, and then the removed rate ratio will be calculated. Okay, to qualify for scoring, your structure must meet, of course, the physical specifications, from 12 to 15 inches in height, 75 grams or less, must fit over the 2-inch tube. If for any reason the structure does not meet this, it will be given time to bring it, time permitting, to bring it into compliance. If it's not brought into compliance, then the scores for the initial weight, initial structure weight, and the weight removed ratio will both be 0. Again, to earn any points, the structure must also support the pressure board for 4 seconds. Okie doke. Now I turn it back to Ron. Oh, sorry, Nora.
Keep the questions coming.
All right, so the presentation. So this section of the presentation really just looks at what happens within the 8 minutes that the team is presenting to the wonderful audience. The central challenge, part of it is the story, and we briefly covered the story before, something, someone, or someplace that's transformed from its beginning appearance to a noticeably different one. Again, the team has full imagination leeway here, any location, real or imaginary, and it could be at any time period. There are no restrictions on the characters, and the story should use effective storytelling, meaning it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So this is one element that has been in the challenge in the past, and we just want to make sure that it's covered for anyone new to this particular challenge. The prop or the set piece. Again, this is coming back. Normally you see props or set piece. We've used it in the challenge in the past. This one does not need to, again, be made of the same materials as the structure as it has in past years. And the biggest thing for the prop or the set piece, your team will designate which one we should be paying attention to, is that it does transform and that the transformation occurs as the pieces are being removed from the structure. The definitions of the prop: a portable object other than a costume, and set piece, a piece of stage scenery built to stand by itself. And then, as mentioned before, the transformation will take place as the structure is transformed. Team choice elements. For those of you who participated years ago, you may know this as side trips, but the name is actually quite appropriate because this is the team's choice. What they want to bring to the challenge is something we don't dictate. It's not something that's outlined in the challenge that we create the parameters for. So they have 2 team choice elements that they get to bring to the performance to make it truly their own. And the biggest point here is that it cannot be already scored within the central challenge. If there's any doubt or question about that, go ahead and go through the score sheet and just see if there's an element already being scored, like the prop or the set piece. And just make sure that the selected team choice element is not one of those items. They will be presented during the 8-minute presentation, and it should have a meaningful connection to the central challenge. I'll get into that in just a little bit more. Team choice elements may show off or showcase an interest, a skill, an area of strength, a talent. Again, this is anything that the team chooses, and nothing's too large or too small here in terms of what somebody may find interesting or important in their world. Again, reiterating, just please make sure that it's not already scored in the central challenge. We do try to catch this in the prep area, and we'll try to be proactive if it does occur, but largely for your team checks, I don't think we'll have too many issues on the day of the tournament. And again, it just has to be a single distinguishable element, again, standalone, just something that when they put in their data form, I want you to pay attention to this. This is my team choice element, that the appraisers will get it. They know exactly what to zone in on so that they can appraise it with as many points as possible because all of the ambiguity has been removed. The points received for team choice elements include creativity and originality, quality, workmanship, and effort, and integration, a meaningful connection into the presentation. The quality, workmanship, and effort is fairly self-explanatory. Those of you returning to this presentation may have heard my definition for creativity and originality. I know there are numerous, especially within DI. But really, in terms of thinking about creativity, it's the extent to which the team makes something their own. So if they're saying a quote of somebody famous like Albert Einstein, are they saying it with an accent? If they're doing something with music, are they writing the lyrics, writing the song? Whatever they're doing to take ownership of whatever they're presenting to the audience, that is where they're adding their creative touch, their originality to the piece. So we do share this with appraisers so that there is a distinguished fact between what is creative, perhaps risky even, and what is quality and workmanship. Integration it seems on the surface to be pretty self-explanatory as well, but can oftentimes be a little bit hard to visualize or to check. So one of the tools that you might use as a team manager is, if you're familiar with the T-chart, is have a column for what's going on with the structure, have a column for what's going on with the story, and then what's going on with the team choice elements. And just kind of in a timeline, map up when one thing's happening with one, what's happening with the others. And the tighter that is woven together, the more integrated all 3 components of the central challenge are. And that's just something that you can even ask your teams. You know, do you understand how that team choice element ties back to our story? How that team choice element ties back to our testing of the structure? So, you know, keep those questions open-ended, let your teams answer them, and generally they'll find their own answers and their own solutions, and they're just perfect. Again, anything the team wants, interests, it could be props, music, technical gadgets, special effects, costumes, physical actions. By no means is this a list that is constraining. I mean, they can add anything they want to this particular list. All right, I'm going to pass it back to Mr. Steve so that he can talk about clarifications that have already come up.
What's going on here?
Okay, I'm back. Okay, general clarification number 1. This was written for virtually all challenges. And this has to do with an instant challenge, the teams being able to ask how much time is left. For instant challenge, the team members may ask the appraiser how much time is left. However, during the... Just a little closer. Yeah, okay, that's good. Is that better? That's good. Okay. Little creative reworking here. However, as I said, they can ask the appraisers how much time is left for instant challenge. However, during the central challenge, they may not ask how much time is left. The timer is set, and once it starts, they cannot ask how much time is left. Clarification number 2, for those of you who have university level teams, a team member over the age of 18 may act as a team manager. You don't have to have a separate team manager. So one of the actual team members can be a team manager. Okay, for clarification number 3, what it basically says is that once you go through check-in and the structure is checked in and it's put back into its container and sealed, you cannot add anything to the structure at all during the presentation time. So, if this were live, I would ask for questions, but you'll have to type in. Clarification number 4. Again, this is a clarification that for the prop, in order for a transformation to take place, parts must be removed from the proper piece of scenery, and you may not add anything to the proper set piece. It can only be through parts removal. And now we're back to Mr. Dutton, and we'll talk to you about special site and presentation information.
At some point in time, we're going to switch to the camera too, Jim. So. Okay, folks, we've been getting many questions. Keep them coming. We're doing a pretty good job of staying up with them. But anyway, we're going to talk a little bit about the site and presentation locations. We understand that a lot of this is oriented towards the Colorado environment because this is the one we're most familiar with. But in talking with some of our colleagues around the country, we think it's not too atypical where, because of years past where we've had the use of many athletic weights and we've had to be proximate to where they're stored to save all of our backs from moving the tons of weight, we've tended to present in the gym. We have actually talked to some of our regional directors out here about possibly moving it into a different environment this year, just because the gym tends to absorb a lot of sand, particularly for the younger teams, and since we're not constrained to have to use weights, we may be getting away from this a little bit. But basically, here's the typical performance area. Walking into the room or in the hallway outside the room, you're going to have a prep area and a weigh-in area. The team's initial point of contact is going to be at the weigh-in area where one or more team members will approach the structure check-in appraisers. That's where they will go through the process we discussed before about checking the height, checking the weight, discussing what kind of materials were used, making sure it's in compliance. That's a situation where if they do have a problem with their structure, the structure check-in appraiser will give them the time available within the overall schedule to try to correct it. Now, in doing so, teams are responsible for having their own, we call it kind of an emergency kit. If there's additional materials, if there's tools or whatever, the tournament will not provide that type of material for them to use. They need to be prepared to do it, but they'll be given the time available. Then there's a prep area, which is where they would be approximately 20 minutes before the presentation time. They will check in, bring their paperwork. A prep area appraiser will walk through them, making sure, as you heard Nora talking about, if there's information, we understand what they're looking for, their team choice elements. In this case, what the removal device is, what the prop or scene is going to be that is going to transform. That's all that takes place in the prep area. Then they move to the launch line, and from there the introduction into the presentation area. Now, by the challenge, and this has been going on for years, we must provide a minimum of a 16 by 16 square foot area for the presentation. Typically when we're in the gym or maybe even in classrooms, we'll provide more area than that if we have it available. But we're required to do a minimum of a 16 by 16. In the lower right-hand corner here, you see where we would be putting a tester base. Now the tester base is taped down, it's anchored. Teams may not move the tester base. That is to make sure that every team faces the same situation at the beginning of presentation time. And next to the tester base, I have these two little shapes. One listed RPC for the removed parts container, and one is the DC, the discard container. And that's where teams, as they have unsuccessfully retrieved parts or successfully retrieved parts, place them at the end of the 4-second counts. And that is what we will be working with the team members to weigh at the conclusion of the presentation time. So we will begin by having those two containers lined up in the same location for every team. Now, depending on your tournament, depending on the layout, it may not look exactly this way in terms of where those are placed relative to the tester base, but wherever they are placed, it will be the same for each team with that tournament, that competition. Once presentation time begins, teams may move those two containers wherever they want to, because we don't know how they plan to access and use their removal device in concert with the tester base and the structure. So they're not anchored to the floor. They can move them wherever they want to. What they cannot do is use the RPC or the DC, the discard container, anywhere else in the presentation. They are used solely for the purpose of conducting the testing. They cannot be used elsewhere in the presentation. Now, in terms of format or presentation, at the conclusion of the presentation time, the test weight placement, or in this case the weight removal appraiser, will meet with one of the team members, take the RPC container containing the parts that have been removed immediately to a place located right outside the performance area, and weigh the parts, and then empty them out and show the tare weight, so the empty weight of the container that the parts are in. And that will be recorded, and that information is then used to determine the overall ratio of weight removed. So you can anticipate, team managers, that in years past where we used and met with one or two of your team members to help us remove weights, in this case the responsibility will be to work with us to verify and validate the amount of weight that was removed from their structure. Okay, this is pretty much a rehash of some of the same information, other than I see that the old slide slipped back in. This says tester base and weights. There will be no weights this time. Okay, it's just the tester base and the pressure board. So I guess in that case, if pressure board is a weight, it's still valid, but I will fix that. The other item is that there is a power cord. Let me back up here. If you see up in the upper left-hand corner of the presentation area, we will have an extension cord with an outlet to that location. If teams have a presentation that requires multiple outlets or extension cords, or they're going to go way out someplace else, it's their obligation to bring a splitter, a power box, or other extension cords. We'll provide the one, but they're responsible for anything after that. Okay, here again is the tester base as we've shown. And Jim, if we can now switch and get a camera on, we'll actually show you what one looks like for those of you that haven't seen it.
Okay, I'll try to do that here.
Yeah.
Don't mind all the microphone noises going on here. And don't look behind the curtain. Okay. We're going to try it for this camera now. That's not the one we want. I want to find my mouse. There we go. Let's try that one. Oh, look at there.
Oh, there we are.
Okay. You'd like to see that full size? Let's see if we can do that.
Okay.
Maybe we're going to be stuck with that size of a picture. Let's go ahead with that, Ron.
It'll work.
You know what, Ron, you'd sure like to have a microphone, wouldn't you? I don't have one for you.
Go ahead and describe it.
Okay. All right. Tester base. As you can see, those the corner posts on the tester base are 7.5 inches tall. In many years, our tallest structure, or our shortest structure allowed, was 7.5 inches. You can see that there's a pretty large area there available to accommodate a structure, and that area then has a safety pole in the middle of it. That safety pole has a 1-inch diameter. Don't let your team be lulled into believing that they can bring a structure into the competition that has a 1-inch diameter hole in it, like Ron's showing you here with our sample structure. It needs to be a 2-inch diameter hole in order to comply with the rules. We'll tell you why here in just a minute, why we need to have that. But you know, Ron's going to put our sample structure down over it. As you can see, we're not giving you any clues as to what we think is going to happen. But show the 2-inch diameter hole in it. So that's a 2-inch diameter hole in the crusher board. And what that means is, if there was a structure built that was less than 2 inches in diameter, then it could slip up through this hole, maybe at the wrong time, and cause a collapse in the weight stack, which could be hazardous for the kids. We are about safety, okay? Anyway, so the team will put the crusher board down on top of the structure, and we've got some convoluted structure-looking thing here.
It's more than 12 and less than 15.
More than 12 and less than 15. Okay, that's what counts. All right, and that's where it'll be. So whereas in years past, for those of you who've got experience looking at this from the previous years, you can see that this is going to be considerably higher. There's also no presence of safety shields this year, so that if anything breaks in that structure, it's going to pop out here, and we're going to be very stringent about watching for eye protection as the structure is put in place. And you can see there's no additional weights going on top of here. So we need to watch, so we're going to watch that very carefully. The teams do need to supply their own safety glasses, and we may have covered that already. But we're going to repeat that. Make sure the team brings safety glasses to the competition. Ron, are you going to get to that in a few minutes? Or okay, all right, then I'm not going to steal your thunder on that one. All right, and what number are we on here?
We're 47.
Okay.
All right, should we shut down that camera at this point?
Yes.
Okay. All right. We'll do that. And then, Ron, I'll let you resume with your discussion here. There was a question too about discard container, but we'll get to that probably at one time.
Okay, in one of the pictures that was shown and will be coming up again, we talked a little bit about the removed parts container, and there was a question about the discard container. We don't have the final containers selected yet, but you can imagine that there's something along the lines of 2 large Tupperware containers distinguished by labels or color or shape to note what the 2 different functions are. Again, those will be sitting on the side, but you can envision something that may be 10 inches by 12 inches by 2 inches high, or a shoebox, something like that. We want to make sure that the dimensions of the containers are such that they would accommodate maybe up to a 15-inch piece if it was breaking and not roll out, because one of the other requirements or limitations for the challenge is that only removed parts that are in the removed parts container at the end of time count towards the weight removed. And so that's one of the reasons we want to make sure that our container can accommodate what we might anticipate as different parts that have been removed, size, shape-wise, whatever, and have to take and be able to accommodate those. Now, one of the things that you see here in this picture is we just had a light bulb moment here. You'll see the safety line here marked out in tape, but the safety line is 6 inches around the entire tester base. And as Steve was talking about, once the pressure board has been placed and the hands removed and the 4-second count starts, no part of a team member, hands, nose, feet, knees, can cross that safety line. Envision it as a plane. It's not to be crossed by anything other than the removal device. Now, in the picture here on the right, you also see just a mock-up of a removed parts container, just something we have available. But you can envision that there would be 2 of those, and they will be distinctly marked, and we will be advising and working with our appraisers to make sure that when teams begin their presentation or when they come into the launch line, that they know which container is which, for which purpose. Again, we want to make sure that they get credit for all successfully removed parts. So it's important that they understand what the 2 are, but we will work with them to know that. On the left side, you also see on the top of one pressure board the number 10 that designates the weight of that particular pressure board. They're all about 10 pounds, but per the challenge, the weight that we use for all teams is the weight of the pressure board rounded to the nearest pound. Now, for instructions for building the tester base, there's the long address here. It's on the DI Colorado website. There's a tendency to sometimes have these addresses change, whatever, but this was current as of 5 o'clock this afternoon. You can go there, and which reminds me, we've had several inquiries about obtaining copies of this presentation. Probably within 48 hours, longest, maybe even sooner, this will be posted on the the DI Colorado website. The entire presentation in PDF form. Team managers, feel free to share this with your team members. What we are doing is we have put together the entire presentation based on the challenge, based on questions we received from other team managers. In some cases, we're putting different words around it, but this is all challenge-based, and we're not showing anything, giving any information here that isn't available to be shared with team members. later on. I don't think at the beginning that Jim mentioned it, but this is also being recorded. And so once it gets completed and finalized, the entire presentation will also be posted on Colorado's YouTube channel. So again, it's information that will be available to you, to team members, to maybe the team managers that weren't able to join us tonight. Okay, moving on. Special procedures as far as check-in. As we mentioned at the very beginning, always go back to challenge specifications. Go back and read the challenge if there's a question. There's an opportunity to review this material, to submit questions for clarifications to the ICMs, okay? But you can go back and take a look at what the procedure is. We're here in Colorado. Let them check in about an hour before the performance time at the structure check-in. If they want to come in earlier, see if everything's okay, or maybe go back and do an initial assessment of weight, that's fine, as long as they don't disrupt the timing and the check-in procedure for another team that is scheduled ahead of them. So if they want to come in early in the morning, see if it's okay, that's fine. If they, if they want to check the weight, if they want to check the height, but we'll work with them. But it's not official until they come back, and you go through it. We go through the compliance list, and then our structure check-in appraisers will hold the structure in a secure box environment, whatever. That also the teams need to provide that secure shelter. But they come in, and then the final time they'll go through the screening, check-in, and then we will hold the structure until they pick it up, getting ready for presentation. Okay, the testing the structure with weights, and again, in this case, weights meaning the pressure board, occurs during the 8-minute time period. When does it end is a common question. And here, for this year, there are 3 different ways in which the part removal part of the presentation ends. Teams may elect a stop weight placement. Well, in this case, again, looks like I missed another weight removal, parts removal. So in this case, the team elects to stop parts removal. Okay? The pressure board or the structure tests any one of the 4 support posts. So when you saw in the video, those 4 corners, okay, if a part or member of the structure was to fail, and that angle of the pressure board came down to where it was touching any one of the support posts, that would end the testing procedure, or their 8-minute time limit expires. So those are the 3 sets of conditions this year. Now, the team, the 8 minutes can run for either the story presentation or the structure. They can finish the structure testing. If it fails or they removed all the parts they planned to, they can continue with the presentation. The other hand, the presentation may be shorter and they need additional time to complete the structure part removal. They can continue to do that up until they get to the 8-minute time. So that's a brief rundown on the structure testing, structure environment. And now the one that a lot of people want to know about is Jim's going to be here to tell you about scoring and getting the points.
Okay, getting the points is important, and although we all want to think of ourselves as giving kids just an opportunity to show their stuff, there's not one kid out there that doesn't want to go up to the stage and pick up a winning trophy. So let's remember that and keep that in our minds as we go on. So first of all, when the team shows up and weighs their structure in, the team that has the lightest structure will receive 50 points. This is per age level, so elementary age level, middle age level, and secondary age level. So the team with the lightest structure gets 50 points. And then every other team that has a heavier structure than the lightest structure team will be scored proportionally, so that you can see that the team score is the lightest initial structure weight divided by this team's initial structure weight times 50. So if a team shows up with a structure that's twice as heavy, it's only going to receive half the 50 points. So if you see where that drift is going to there. The next important metric, let's see if I can catch up here with the slides. The next important metric is going to be the weight removed ratio. And that is going to receive a maximum of 90 points. You see that's a pretty substantial hike over the initial structure weight. So the team that removes the most weight from their structure will, the structure with the highest weight removed ratio will receive 90 points. And the ratio, the team score then is the team's weight removed ratio divided by the highest weight removed ratio times 90. So if a team removes half as much weight, then they're going to receive half the points. Percentage, excuse me, it's a percentage of the weight held ratio to the highest weight held ratio. Right. Next, we're going to show you a scoring example here. Maybe that'll help out. You can see that we have teams A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and these, I want to stress, the lawyer in us made us put the disclaimer at the bottom, and that says that these are just suppositional numbers. Nobody has built this structure or run a tournament with these numbers as yet. So note, however, that the team C has the highest structure weight removed. So they got a scaled weight removed points of 90 because they removed 75% of their weight. You can see that that structure started out at 48 grams, looking at line C again, 48 grams, and the weight removed was 36. So 75% of that structure was removed to give them the 90 points. And they got the 90, and you can see that others up and down that column had smaller points because they removed smaller percentages of their structure weight. Take a look at Team G. They had the lightest structure of all, and their structure, because it was the lightest to start out with, got the full 50 points there.
And held the pressure board.
And it held the pressure board.
Yes. To be eligible for scoring, they had to hold the pressure board.
Yes. Okay, in order for it to be considered for scoring, it has to be able to hold up that crusher board. We all know the crusher board's in the range of 10 pounds. It's going to be the same for the entire group of students at each given level. But neither of those teams had the team score the highest. And you can see that Team F removed 65% of their structure weight, and their structure was 83% as where are we here?
It was 17% lighter.
Yeah, there we go, 17% lighter. They had one minus. Okay, so it was 17% heavier, I think, than the lightest one.
And he's an engineer.
Yeah, I'm an engineer. That's great. Thanks. Thanks for the abuse, guys. So, in any case, it's a combination of the two weight held or the two ratios that gets added together to give the team score for the structure. So it's not just the team with the lightest structure. It's not just the team that removes the highest percentage of its weight. It's got to be a combination, and it's got to be it's got to work.
And the highest score may not be 120.
And the highest score may not be 120. That's right.
And it's not 140 like the test did.
Right. Although that score could be as high as 140.
It could be. Right.
It could be as high as 140 if the same team had both the lightest structure and the highest removed ratio. So, okay. Next, we're going to show you how these things relate in a few minutes. But for now, the story is scored. There's a creativity factor. There's a dramatic effect of the prop or the set piece transformation and how that tension is overcome. I don't think it's a tension issue, is it? Okay. So transformational depiction of how the set changes as parts are removed. And then creative integration of the structure, part removal with the story. And we watch for this integration as the appraisers are scoring. Integration is a big deal. So I got some distractions around here. I have 3 people answering questions of those of you online. 2 of them are chuckling at any given moment, so I've got to focus on what I'm talking about here. Okay, so the element is the removal device up to 40 points, and that 40 points is made up of creativity of the removal device and quality and workmanship of the removal device. Nora said earlier that we distinguish between quality and workmanship and creativity. A very creative device may fail totally, and a device that looks highly polished and beautiful but has no creativity about it, it is one that's not going to carry the load either. So the next part is the story and prop and the set piece transformation up to 60 points. Creativity of the story, 20. Dramatic effect of the prop set, 30. And integration with the story, up to 10 points. Important things to watch for. So have your teams be aware that we're going to be watching for this as we're scoring them at tournament. Team choice elements. Nora talked to you lovingly about team choice elements. She really enjoys watching these things, and we enjoy seeing too what the kids come up with. Again, we're looking for creativity and originality as one category up to 10 points. Quality workmanship up to 10 points. And integration into the story, 10 points for a total of 30. And that applies to both team choice element 1 and 2. Now, I want to tell you that we've had teams show up to tournament and say, we don't have any team choice elements, we're not worried about it. I'm going to show you in just a few minutes that you need to worry about that. The team needs to come up with something. I don't care what, how, as creative as possible is the preference. What we want to do is have the kids maximize their opportunities for getting points, and that's one place it would be. So let's take a look at the pie chart here. Now that we've all finished dinner, we are thinking about pie. So take a look at where the points come from. And this is the central challenge. And this is the challenge, the part of the challenge that is presented on stage. The story and the transformation, 25%. Structure, initial weight, lightest initial weight is 21%. That's pretty close. Look at weight removed ratio, 37%. That's a big deal. The removal device is 17%. So these are the ways that we're going to be scoring that. But you're saying to yourself, what happened to those side trips? Here they are. Not side trips, they're team choice elements, excuse me. I've got to throw a quarter into the pit now. The team choice elements are 15%, and the full day's score here, 60% of the day's score is central challenge. 15% of the day's score is team choice elements, and 25% of the score at the end of the day is instant challenge. I believe and I recommend that you follow this kind of a roadmap in how you invest your team's time in what they're going to work on. Instant challenge is a big deal. We've seen teams go from absolute first place to third, fourth, and sixth place because they blew it in instant challenge. You need to work with your kids in instant challenge. Sometimes it's tough. It takes a lot of creativity just to come up with a creative or the opportunities for kids to show a creative solution. Work on those things. It's a good thing. There are some books out there that you can use to put together interesting and challenging instant challenges. But the team choice elements, I'm going to back up with this for just a minute. The team choice elements are 15% of the day's score. If we take that 60% central challenge, and let me just lay a little math on you here, and we take that 15% divided by 60%, if the team choice elements were back in the central challenge area, that would account for 25% of the score. So consider that those team choice elements are a big deal. They're as big as the story. They're bigger than the structure, the widest structure weight. So consider that. The team choice elements are a big deal. Have them wow us. We just love to see kids that are highly creative and come up with these great team choice elements. So that's where the points come from. Use this and go accordingly when you challenge your team and get them going. I think there's some other things to talk about too. Anybody else want to take over on this?
I can do it.
I can do it. Okay, good. We like that. Go get it.
Thanks, Jen. All right. For those of you who haven't met Jim yet, he's amazing. He's super knowledgeable and definitely makes these webinars possible. Plus, he runs several of the tournaments. So if you're lucky enough to get to see him, you're very lucky.
I'll get over it.
This is, I was told to get over it, but it's too bad. Kudos. Anyways, I'm going to start wrapping up the presentation now. Thank you so much for spending the time with us and learning all of this. Please do take this opportunity as I'm wrapping up with this presentation to submit any final questions that are lingering. When we mentioned that there's some snickering going on as questions were being submitted, please know that we don't laugh at the questions that you're submitting. We do have some wonderful colleagues that like to throw us curveballs and make sure that we know the challenge and our roles as clearly as we can. So we enjoy the camaraderie that we've built over the years. So let's go ahead and wrap this up. Again, keep the questions coming and we'll be sure to answer them as we can. All right, so again, safety is the top priority. There are some differences between regions based off of the school facilities that the tournament is being held at. But again, if you have questions, go ahead and refer to rules of the road, specifically pertaining to chemicals, electrical devices, dry ice, helium, and more. No weapons, please. No weapon-looking props, especially. There is a no tolerance policy often. And then again, the teams must provide eye protection. We covered that briefly earlier, and this is definitely a case where we're going to be looking for that, particularly because as pieces are being removed from the structure, we do not have the safety shields in place. Closed-toed shoes for the team members who handle weights, but we don't have the weights, so don't worry about that right now. And then again, just feel free to consult the rules of the road or reach out to your regional challenge master, and I'll get you that contact information shortly. If you have any location-specific considerations, either they'll be able to answer it or they'll know the individual that they can reach out to get the answer to you. Again, attention to details. The cost limit for what comes into the presentation area on the day of the tournament is $150. The structure scoring consists of two separate elements. Again, generally described as the initial structure weight and the weight of what's removed from the structure, so the weight removed ratio. Only the pressure board is placed on the structure this year, no additional weights. It's really going to be the pressure board and then what the team can remove. And because we do not have all of those additional weights, there will be no adult assistance. The regional tournament information that we have to date, as you can see for North Metro, we don't have anything quite yet. These are, for the most part, settled, but as these change, please double check the calendar online. But in Colorado, we've got Jeffco, Boulder, South Metro, Southwest, Western Slope. You guys can read it, largely spanning 3 weeks right now. As a side chime in, if any of you have any recommendations or would like us to reach out to anybody for appraisers, we'd be happy to. We can definitely use the help to make sure that we have a robust appraiser team to celebrate what the team has accomplished and be sure that we're able to recognize and appraise all the points possible. And then, of course, the state tournament on April 25th. Regional Challenge Masters. Again, this slide presentation is made available online, but so is this webinar. At a later date, we'll be posting that information and that link when it does become available. But you can see the State Challenge Masters up at the top. Again, our wonderful Jim Circo that I mentioned, Jeff Coe, North Metro and Boulder, thank you, and everybody else. So just take a time now, go ahead and jot down those emails. Again, feel free to reach out via phone or email. I know Ron and my email addresses were listed earlier in the presentation. If we can't answer it or feel that it's best put to a clarification, we'll let you know. And otherwise, we will respond as quickly as possible. Lose to Win Team Manager training. We have completed the November 15th training. You are now participating in the November 18th training. Thank you so much and congratulations. You're nearly done. And then we'll go ahead and have another live training in Colorado, January 10th. Check the website for details. And then a follow-up webinar, again, for team managers on January 13th.
I'm not wrap up when you're done.
Okay, perfect. Just a final, again, legal disclaimer, because we do know that we're speaking from Colorado. This presentation and the comments presented during this training and associated webinars are based on the written challenge, but they nonetheless represent the interpretation of the Colorado State Challenge Masters affiliate for the A. The presentation has not been reviewed by the Challenge E, aka Structure Challenge, ICMs, or GI headquarters. If you're unsure or confused about something or think we're in error, please submit a clarification request. Again, not that we're going to be in trouble, but we do want you to know this is our interpretation, what we're doing to try to give you the biggest peace of mind and the information at your fingertips so that you can move forward successfully with your teams. Clarifications, you can do that through idodi.org. And here is, again, just a slide to show you how you're going to get there. But following this, I'm going to go ahead and hand it back to Ron. He was watching for the questions that have been coming through, and he just wants to make sure that they get answered. So again, thank you for joining us. I'm going to hand it to Ron, and it was nice spending the evening with you.
Thank you, Nora. Yes, the slide that Nora just went through on the clarifications is a new one from she last saw it. Just wanted to provide some information that came out of questions that we received from some of our team managers at our live training. So here you have a couple of screenshots for idodi.org. At the upper left-hand corner, the one numbered 1, right in the middle of that main screen, you will see clarifications as one of the options. And that's where the black circle is. So if you do that, click on that one, it will take you to slide 2, which is in the center right, where published clarifications, these are the general clarifications such as the 4 that Steve went through with you before. You'll want to go back and consistently check these in case there are new ones coming out. These are ones that are clarifying part of the challenge or making sure that everybody's getting consistent information at the general level. So you can start at number 1, clarifications will take you to slide 2. And when you click on that, that's what you see in the lower left-hand corner there. So there's a couple examples there. One is you'll see clarification 1, which was actually what we had up on the screen before. That was issued on September 18th, 2014. Any new ones will get added there. But where you see the ellipse there, the black one, that says click here, that's where your team would click on to submit a clarification request. And the answer to that will come to your team only. Those are not clarifications that are published for all teams. When you submit a team-only request for clarification, you will get an answer back directly, strictly to your team. And if the response to that is something that is germane and the team uses in their solution, please bring a copy of that clarification with your team to tournament. So this is a little bit more information on the clarification process, how you keep up with it, how you submit them, and what you can expect back. Now, a couple other things. We've had several questions that came up regarding scales. For those of you that are not familiar with them, we didn't bring any this time, but here's examples of 3 different scales that are like the ones that we would use. And so the critical factors for team managers, or we have a couple RCMs out there, is accuracy to 1/10 of a gram or more. We round out to the nearest 1/10 of a gram. But so you want to have a scale that is accurate to at least 1/10 of a gram. Suggested capacity is 300 grams or more. Now, as you recall, the structure is limited to 75 gram weight, but some of these scales, the platinum surface there isn't large enough to accommodate some of the configurations of structures that we see. So oftentimes we lay a small piece of flat plexiglass on that, and in order to then accommodate additional weight, you'll want at least 300 grams of capacity. Some of ours are 500, and you get them up to 1,000. The costs, they're not expensive. Somewhere between $10 and $25 plus shipping. There are some, I know if you go through eBay, that they include shipping free. And on the right side, you see the eBay site. Harbor Freight is a retail store that has a lot of tools in that. They have some of the smaller scales, and oldlilnutscales.com is another mail order one that you go on site, and they have small ones like the one up in the upper left that is really quite small. The lower ones in the lower left is what we use at a lot of our competitions. But there's a couple sites there. We've noticed that in most cases, food and dietary scales typically don't register to tenths of a gram. It's usually a gram, so you may want to avoid those. But it's a little information on scales. And then for some of you first-time team managers, you're thinking, well, what is required to build structures? And so what we have coming up here is just some of the basic tools that a team could use, and with these tools they could build pretty much any structure that they would want to. So you've got in the upper left-hand corner X-Acto knives, a steel straight edge or ruler, which not only helps people with drawing straight lines, but gives them a guide for cutting if they choose to do it that way. There are two saws shown there, and these are what are called micro saws. If you saw them up closely, they have somewhere between 28 and 42 teeth per inch. In our live demonstration, I always just show my, cut it across my hand. You almost can't injure yourself with them. I won't say you can't, but it's difficult. Okay, and so they're a safe tool that with a little guidance, your team members could get the hang of for making cuts. And then there's two additional ones, which are miter boxes, which allow them to cut at consistent angles. So some of these woods, when you start talking these smaller pieces, they're relatively fragile. So it's not table saws, it's not band saws, it's not saber saws. No heavy-duty electronics required here, or electrical tools. Pretty much can be all done with hand tools. Now you can move up from there, but what we're trying to convey here is that pretty basic, simple tools. Most of these will be available at hobby shops, model shops. The X-Acto knives are $4. The micro saws are anywhere from $7 to $13. The miter boxes, oftentimes you can buy in a set, but they may be $7 or $8 as well. So again, not an expensive type situation. One other question that we've had is several requests now for the how to build a tester base address. There was a very lengthy address at the beginning, but what I'm going to do, if I don't lose it, is try to go back to the beginning. Hang on, sorry to make...
And seasick.
Yeah, hang on, I'm almost there. I thought I was going to click and go hit the button to go back to the beginning, but it didn't happen that way. We will post it on dicolorado.org, but my address, rw76@gmail.com. If you will send me an email, once I get through the edits, because we've spotted a couple errors, such as the reference to tension and weights as opposed to a pressure board, we'll get those revised. I will send out a copy to you. Make sure if you're requesting a copy that your inbox can handle a 5 megabyte file. because that's about what they're running. But if you're wanting a copy, just let me know and I'll get one to you. And with that, are there any other questions that have come up, colleagues here?
Haven't seen anything.
Nothing?
A few old things here and there, but nothing's there.
Okay. Well, we hope this has been of value. Thank you for your participation tonight and questions. As Nora mentioned, we're going to be doing another one of these in January. 98% of the material will be the same. If there's a new clarification or something like that, it may be revised, but pretty much it's the same thing. It's just you're the teams that are getting out there ahead of the game. You're starting early. We know some teams won't get going until after the holidays, and so we want to make it available to them. But anyway, we will leave the channel open for 3 or 4 more minutes. If we get any more questions, we'll continue to answer them. If not, we'll log off in 3 or 4 minutes, and everyone have a good night. Thank you.
You're going to email them a copy of the, okay.
Can we turn the mic? Can we mute that?
Yeah, we can make this mic, although I don't guarantee it. Good night, all. Thanks for your attendance.
Great job, everybody. Wonderful. I seem to go a lot better than last year.
Oh,
Any feedback you have, just let us know.
Okay.
I failed to start the recording until we were about 3 minutes in.
Yeah, well, that's
I'm sorry.
one.
The first 3 minutes was saying.
Terry says the mic's not muted.
Oh, there, okay. All right. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you.
What's going on? What's going on? How did you know it was over? Did Dad tell you?
No, I don't need to.
Just a hug.
Or you're gonna have your hands full.
That's what I did, but I think that I think this microphone up here is taking over. Oh. And this one's up front. I can disconnect that one probably.